Goeiedag! Good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. So lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know looking for.
Koinant! Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. But first, a shout out to Marlena, who has been very, very busy. We have live streams scheduled for the next 7 days. Yep, it's going to be a busy week. Tonight we'll meet a remarkable man, Soli Philander, understated, but with a unique outlook on life. Before we go to Soli, we are auctioning the first of the new Big Five paintings tonight. Funds go to help Isaac van Zyl's hospital costs. Isaac is now in recovery and his stitches are starting to heal well. Let me show you the painting behind me. There it is. That's a painting that we're selling tonight. We're auctioning tonight. Okay, let me tell you about the painting. The name of the painting is Rhino at African Sunset. Let me show you the painting. Here we go. Isn't that gorgeous? Rhino at African Sunset, size 60 centimeters by 40 centimeters. Material, oils on stretch canvas. Artist, Lynn Ward. Starting bid or reserve is 5,000 Rand. Now, to place a bid, say painting and the amount you're bidding in the side chat with a starting bid of over 5,000 Rand. Okay, our guest tonight is Soli Philander, a very, very interesting man, as you will soon find out. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you a short video which gives you an idea of his background. Let me get that on.
The weekend and a fantastic tribute to you. But what makes it for me all the more impressive is that you went up to achieve and receive this award as a comedian, and yet comedian's only a very small part of who Soli Philander is.
This is the difficulty about being me. Let me again stress, this is always the disclaimer. I'm an incredibly humble person. So now I don't know what to do with all that humility, because I excel in all these, and I mean I really do. I excel in all these fields. I win awards, do you know what I mean, across these fields. And the more I'm kind of,
you probably just got cupboards of
little
them
me from Elsie's River in the Cape. It's like, oh, but you've done this, and you've done this, and you've done. So the truth about that is that, and I don't know how true that is for anybody else, but my honest truth is that this is a result of so many people, so many energies impacting on my life. And I get to be one of those really blessed South Africans. I was raised by an extraordinary woman, extraordinary woman with an understanding of my life, a huge spirit, and just apparently her mission in life was to make me believe in myself. Of course, that's all I remember her all the time telling me, "You special, you're different, you're amazing, you can do anything you want." And I think, I didn't understand the gravity of that when I was growing up. When I was on Eris here, Nan Richards would phone me from somewhere I've never been in South Africa and say, "Ek luister na jou, Soli, hou net aan, doen wat jy doen. Ek is agter jou 150%. Is 'n bergie in the street saying, "You speak for me, Soli, do this, you must do this, you must never stop." All people saying, "I'm so proud of what you're doing." And the support for what I've achieved have come from all corners of South Africa and from all different strata. And I feel myself owned by South Africans like that.
Okay, there you go. That's just a little insight into Soli. As you can see, a very, very interesting man. Let's get Soli on. Here we go. Hi, Soli.
Scott, how are you?
Excellent, buddy, excellent. I love your little icon on Skype. You've got Mandela just behind you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's a habit that I have. Whenever I go and there's representations of him, then I take pictures of those, like I'm taking a picture with him. I like to flatter myself to think we resemble each other in kind of.
Well, I was about to say, Soli, that you know that Mandela said he has got Griqua blood. And you know he's got high cheekbones. And you've got high cheekbones. So the high cheekbones originally come from the Khoisan. So I would suggest that you have the same ancestry going way back.
Maybe. I don't know. Mine's intensely diverse. I mean, I have. I know that there's a unifying element in it, because when they did the genetic research thing, that genetic tagging thing, that whole thing, they found a couple of things. One was that there was a genetic marker amongst the so-called colored people here in the Western Cape,
right,
that all had maternal Khoi strain or tag,
right,
and then they had the other thing was that they found that I found out that in my direct line that my family had some Tswana influence.
Isn't it amazing what they can dig up?
And then the Malaysian influence.
Wow.
And then that's.
You represent the world.
We have various names for it. In Afrikaans, it would be Babueti in traditional Afrikaans, and in Cape Afrikaans and in Cape culture, it would be Briani. And in I suppose what would be the Western equivalent would be something with that is a mixture of a lot of the like jambalaya. Or that.
That'll work. That'll work.
Yeah, that one, something like that. Yeah.
Now, do you know much about your family history going way back, or is it just through that genetics? Did your mother tell you much about that?
I have much more of a sense of my direct, from my mother and my grandmother, and then sort of a oral thing. And not too definite oral thing after that, but it's much more of a. I found that of late, and also since I've moved back into the district, and since my association with District 6 has become a lot stronger, and over recent years, and especially through me living here now, I discover a lot more of my history than I'm aware of. Like for example, I know that when I was a kid, I grew up in Elsies River, which is stuck between Cape Town and Belleville. Belleville's like the next big stop on the Northern Line.
Right.
If you're going that, heading up towards Johannesburg on the N1. Then Belleville is like your next big stop. It's where the inter provincial buses services and all those things in the interprovincial train, the national stuff will acknowledge Belleville, but it doesn't have an airport. It's not that big.
Yeah, Belleville's been in the news a bit recently.
Well, Belleville is there's a lot. There's a lot that happens in Belleville, and not the least of that is an idea that there's a strong foreign national. It's what we call black people from Africa, up north of our border here.
The
There's a lot
invaders.
of well, I would imagine that would be much more South Africans. We'll reserve that for actual South Africans invaders. Yeah. No. Foreign nationals. Why am I speaking about this? I'm getting really old, so now I'm in the space where, in the middle of sentences, I forget what I was talking about.
Now, tell us about your life before growing up in South Africa. Um, sorry, tell us about your life before growing up in South Africa today, how it was before 1994, and how it has been impacted since the ANC took power. Have a look at the two sides. How has it changed?
No, it's very okay. Part of this is what is very important to me as a South African and as a creative person and as somebody who I think tries to do that examined life thing, nothing worse than the unexamined life, that the road less traveled stuff. So I do a lot of consideration around things and mood and tone and nuance and those kinds of things are kind of incredibly important to me. I think there's a lot of that has gone out of the world. I think the world's become very obvious and in your face and not much room for nuanced interpretation, which is what life is. Life is so much nuance and mood and tone, and yet in the modern world, there's a desperate rush for um, glaring and obvious, and you can't miss this, and a real pandering to the extent of attention and energy that requires and takes. So for me, it's really hard to quantify my life in terms of pre and post, and we speak of it here as pre-democracy and post-democracy, which in itself already becomes for me a problematic definition, because when growing up here and growing up under an oppressive system, you have to compromise certain things. It just is, in the name of freedom, in the name of liberation, in the name of change, in the name of manifesting some kind of future vision about what your reality is. And so you make a certain amount of compromise with that understanding is what you do. And so when you decide, because then it becomes choice stuff, when you decide that you would compromise on a certain approach, you would, and you had to under apartheid. It's like it's why it's so difficult to speak about it here, because when you refer, it's so triggering for people, and for black people, it's just a rehashing of a particularly unpleasant and life kind of souring and tinging experience. Of course, for black people, I mean, if I think of myself, I'm 60 years old now, and I often, if I'm forced into this kind of 50-50 game, I literally go 30-30, and I feel like for 20 years of my life, I lived under apartheid, and then for about 10 years after that, I kind of starkly was dealing with the consequences of living under apartheid or growing up under apartheid. And then
Right.
the next 30, the next 30, how I find myself here, is the next 30, trying not to impose my understanding of what makes the world make sense for me on anybody else. That my understanding of how this works is entirely for the improvement of my own existence, and for clarifying for myself my motivations, and why I'm here. So this idea then that under apartheid you decide, you choose, you go, this is how much I will do. If you think that for white people under apartheid was really also what people tend to forget is that it was also enforcement on white people. Whilst white people enjoyed benefits of apartheid, and all the glory and really distorted evil interpretation of what existence is, they were also forced to do that. People forget that. I don't know, and white South Africans seem to forget to remind people about that. That they were forced to. If you
Right.
didn't obey the law, you were in trouble with the law, and you could go to prison. Of course, you not to the extent that black people were, but that didn't deny that could happen to you, and that resistance to the government meant detention without trial, and you could be hounded by the security police, and you could lose your life. Those things happened. Neil Agate happened, and we all still don't know how and why.
Right.
So, so we have that understanding about growing up under apartheid. For myself, I have that. The implications of that for me is that my desires and my choices and my visioning and my where things live for me, where Soli Philander becomes alive, becomes a vibrating energy, something that matters, something that is affecting its environment, and in a positive way. When it comes alive for me around those ideas, that the choices around the nobler instincts, the choices around the idea of almost that godly challenge to be kind and to be good and to look after one another, and to be in community, and find only pleasure in the equal elevation of each other, and share common sorrows, and elevate each other, edify one another, look for the better in each other, challenge us to be our best selves. Those things that when we do that as human beings, is so extraordinary about life. We
Yeah.
we, we build such remarkable relationships, and life is enriching. Even struggle is enriching, because it's on some level, it feeds a desire to answer with honor, and to answer with character, and to answer with meaning. So those things, if you think about it, then under apartheid, they were clearer defined.
Right. Get it.
It was easier to understand what was required from you. The sacrifices, the compromises, the letting go of this to gain that, the making sense of the surfing, the wave, the dynamics, staying out of trouble, living and possibilities and futures that weren't yours to imagine. All those things still evoked within it. And this is the I always say it is the most extraordinary thing, because when Nelson Mandela articulated what his dream for South Africa was, because initially that was what we all went on. I mean, it was like an unspoken agreement amongst South Africans that we would try that,
Right.
because we there must be a basic understanding that your ordinary South African is not naive. We're not we're not citizens who aren't aware of the complexities of our situation. We know that there is a lot to address in our country, and we also know that a lot of how we approach it and how it's slanted for us. There's a huge awareness, and I don't think there's enough acknowledgement about this inside the country and out. There is a huge acknowledgement within the groupings in South Africa that we need to find a way to integrate those groupings or work along those, find ways to together facilitate this living thing. And
Yeah.
that all this argument, all this vitriol and this demand for the eradication of each other and all this, those are all like I'm afraid a fair amount of it is in the name of passionate debate and impact and having your voice heard and your argument felt, and your thing, your opinion or your what you're holding out, listening to your philosophy understood, all those things. But in the practical reality of living, the challenge is always you and me. How do we engage? And what is it that we share with one another? It is just as pat and as simple as that. If you were Scott the asshole and I was Soli the asshole, and when we first got together and made a little Skype call talking about talking, this would never have happened. You would have said something, I would have said something, and in that engagement, the result of that engagement would have just been, well, what a terrible idea. Except now here we're sitting talking because between us happened that assumed need from one another, that you see me, you respect me, you're not here to impose anything on me. We're here to share ideas. We're here to engage. We're here to see what we find interesting and empathic and evolving about one another. I find that in explaining myself to others, I hear myself. I make more sense to myself, and what I really, really do. And so what I need in that instance is, if I'm talking to someone, if they don't agree with me, to not attack me, but to show me how they're disagreeing with what I'm saying.
I get it.
Can so make sense to me.
I just want to say that you have a fascinating outlook to life. I mean, you have a very different outlook to life, and I think a lot of that has to do with your mother. She had a huge role on you, didn't she, when you were a young man?
Well, okay, so so I grew up. I mean, I grew up in a completely in home in the house.
Right.
I grew up in a female environment. There were in my immediate home. My mother lived with us, but I lived with my grandmother, and my grandmother raised me. I was my grandmother's child. My mother was more like a father figure in my life.
She's the one who spanked you.
If you knew my mother, you would not laugh. I can so guarantee you that. My mother's that classic. And they have that in the United States. That mother who just like, if she walks into a room and it looks like how she just dies. She just abuses you, that you dare do that to her. It's because you're doing it to her. And if you should show any like disrespect for a woman or something, it'll be like, what? You dare? That idea that you just dare even, and in her presence, we won't talk about that. And your mother must always thinks that she could just give you a hiding right there and then. It doesn't matter how old you are. How could you? So
you're always that little boy, aren't you?
You can just do what you like. But what's ironic about it is that my mother and I spend a lot of time now laughing at being old. So that's a lot of fun, actually. It's a weird therapy for me. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But we do laugh about getting old. Impactful people, impactful human beings, these women, both of them. My mother in a completely different way from my grandmother. My mother was my mother's a lover of danger.
A lover of danger.
My mother is she is a junkie for, and when I say danger, I mean like situations where it might end up that she'd have to fist fight. You understand my predicament in life.
I do.
I grew up with this woman who, at the drop of a hat, when she had had enough, the only way out was now a fist fight. That was my mother. And it didn't matter who the other person was, to be a man or a woman. And my mother was a really good fighter. She was useless.
It sounds like an interesting family life.
Oh, my mother was a fighter of note. So my mother was also one of those. My mother is one of those people, and I don't know how this lands in the United States, but my mother is one of those women who are who completely respects you. She doesn't have to agree with you, but she will completely respect you if you'll stand for what you believe in, even if she doesn't believe it, and if you are willing to go to the end. You do know what I mean? Go
Yeah.
in front of
Yeah.
the firing squad for it. She'll be like, no, respect, respect. That's it. You say what you believe and then you stand for what you believe. She's one of those people. So you don't, with my mother, you don't get a chance to kind of scam. You can't pretend because my mother just busts you right away. And she's kind of got that. She's not shy of a profanity. My mother.
Right. Now, I have to say, you turned out very different to your mother, personality-wise.
Because my grandmother, who is the love of all my existence and the woman who saved me from everything that was coming to get me, and who really made me believe that I was that the world was my stage, that I could that I could talk to you and not have to for a moment step back from who I was, and I didn't have for a moment apologize for what I believed, and that I had value. I had intrinsic value that nobody could take away from me, and that I came with that, and that I was here for a purpose, and that meant something, and that if I just believed in myself, and if I trusted the Lord, if I believed in myself and I trusted the Lord, I would do incredible things.
Right. Now, I pick up that you feel things very deeply, and you have that sort of synergy, that link to nature and just link to what's going on around you. What has been the most... yeah, carry on.
No, I was going to say I'm trying to normalize that. It's empathy. I'm an empath. It's unavoidable. I think I was very early in my life when I understood it, and I didn't know what to call it, but I was aware of it, and with that awareness came the blessing that I understood that I had to manage it, and that I had to be very careful about myself and hanging on to myself in it. And it didn't help that I then went into the performing arts, because then I lost myself in roles. After every every run of a production, I actually had to consciously disconnect from characters that I played, night after night in a run of a show.
Right.
And some of that was really good because they were really good. Shakespeare's and Beckett is like every time you do Beckett, you grow a little bit, you evolve a little bit more as a human being. But and I do a lot of comedy. I did a lot of comedy. And so those kind of things. It's a manifestation of something that my grandmother invested in me, and it was a thing about identity. And I was lucky that the people who crossed my path in my life had affirmed that for me. Everywhere that it was necessary, I had that affirmed. I was told by people, "You are enough. You don't have to change. You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to perform. When you're working, by all means perform. You're really good at it. But when you're doing you don't have to perform. When you just let your heart open, you just are yourself. It works. It works brilliantly. So that's what I do. I just trust it. I let my heart speak. I let my emotion lead. I do. I find now in this time that the best thing that happens for me is when I publicly sorrow, when I burst uncontrollably into tears in public spaces, and people see me cry, and they don't. It doesn't disturb them. Everybody's okay with me crying, because I'm of the conviction we are publicly being scarred and wounded and lacerated. We are being whipped in public. I don't understand why we have to go sorrow in private.
Yeah.
I'm fully prepared for the world to see what this means to me. That losing people and human lives being treated as
It's terrible what goes on.
Collateral damage.
Yeah.
I can't. I've never been good with the concept, and I never will. It's something that I know about myself. So yeah, this time is challenging me to my ex said to me a little while ago, and it's also such a funny story, except when I say it's my ex, then you like think, okay, because my ex, she said to me, she said to me, do you know something? And I said, what? She said, you know, COVID can kill you in 4 days. Now,
That changed your life, didn't it?
well, when your ex says something like that, firstly, you kind of like, hold it. Why? Why that? Why specifically?
Yeah.
Are you feeling the need to tell me that? Are you wishing me that? But then she was like, no, I know you. And so my question to you is, should you get COVID today, are you ready to die in 4 days? Have you done it all? Did you say everything you wanted to say? And does everybody know what you mean? And does, is your approach here? Does somebody else know what your intention is? So, and maybe would they be interested in taking that forward?
Yeah.
And and this is, you understand why I love this woman more than more than life itself. She's an extraordinary woman. She's the mother of my children, and
Are you still good friends?
oh, we're the ultimate friends. I mean, we started
that's
there.
good. Yeah. Now look,
ended up
I
there
just want to take you back to the theatre and performing.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, look, I could never act. Okay, you put me on a stage, and I remember when I was a 8-year-old at boarding school, and I was such a bad actor that they made me Wednesday's dinner in the Reluctant Cannibal play, and my one line was, "I'm Wednesday's dinner," and I forgot my line.
Yeah.
So when you take on a role like Beckett or something like that, or one of the Shakespearean players, do you just find you can sort of metamorphosize into that personality, the person who is that person? Do you have that flexibility within yourself to do that?
It's interesting because you ask very difficult questions. It's one of those. It's also one of those kind of, you evolve into it. I think it's what they call a style. Performers develop a style because you find the mechanism for yourself, the little way through to unlock the door to that person. So it's like unlocking a door. Like what do they call them? Those lock picks.
Yeah.
That you have carefully do all the things. You have to detail the character. What are the little mannerisms? What are the pauses? How do they breathe? How do they sit? How do they hold themselves? Why are they motivated to present like they do? What are the subtext in what they say? So everything is so damn considered. And when you start, of course, you know nothing, and then you're just going on instinct. But as you go along, you start to connect your instinct to process, because it's very important in performance process. It's the oft unspoken thing about performance and about artistry and creativity. It's like your Janis Joplins and your all the people who burned brightly. No, I'm serious. It's that thing about it's a little bit mad. It's a little bit crazy creativity. The artistic streak is a little off. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a really, really good way. But I think the world is wrong. I think when people show a proclivity for artistic endeavor and for and in the capacity and ability for it, it should be encouraged. It should be engendered. It should be held by the world. Artists should be treated special,
Right.
In this way, that their work isn't incumbent on anyone, and that the product isn't a result of a profit motivation or a gender driven thing. The agenda of art should be art, and art is the examination of life. Art is the exploration of life. Art is the evolution of life. Art is criticism of life. Art is all those things, and that should be That should be the automatic thing in living. It should be what we, don't want to say worship, but I want to say it should be, we should treat it like we treat spirit,
Right.
because it is like spirit. Art is like spirit. And we
Uh,
should treat it the same.
I just want to address those watching. We got well over 300 people watching at the moment. Please, guys, remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Please remember there's a painting on auction tonight with the funds going to the hospital costs of Isaac, who's just had a huge heart operation. So please, if you like the painting, and it's a gorgeous painting, please just put your bid in the side chat, and Marlena will look after that side of things. Now, Soli, back to you. Now, looking at the theatre, you also have written quite a few plays, haven't you? Tell us about what inspires you to write.
Okay, so the theatre is it's like a twofold thing for me. I fell into it, and it was and because it was then and it was the time. It was just post sort of when, it was only in the 70s when John Carney and Winston Shawner were performing, and then they came to the States and won Tony Awards. But that was during a time when black people weren't allowed to perform, in theatres. And or come and watch shows, and you weren't allowed to have mixed audiences in theatres. But also in some theatres, black people just weren't allowed, or on stages. Performance wasn't really a thing that black people did in the country. And John and Winston did that remarkable thing, and then they went to Broadway and they won Tony Awards, and it was two rather extraordinary productions. It was, along with Athol Fugard, they did Sidwe Banzi's Dead and The Island, and the world took notice. Everybody saw it, and so, and in that environment, I slipped into the theatre. In that environment, I was going to with a friend for an audition at the Space Theatre. The Space at that time was kind of the alternative. They were perpetually being closed down by the security branch. The woman who directed the show that I was eventually in was hauled in and out of prison.
Wow.
Constantly being watched, and people. Well, it was in the height of apartheid.
Yeah, right.
The shit was going down, and so into that environment, Peter Snyders, who was a coloured First Nation playwright, wrote a play about racist terminology. It's interesting, and I went along with a friend who was going for an audition, and the stage manager hauled me in and said, "Come, no, you must read." Somebody was going to read. They didn't pitch. I read, and then I got the part. Not coming there to act or anything. Anyway, this went on, and I went to rehearsals, and a couple of days before opening night, the main lead actor decided we would have no more of it, and he stormed out of rehearsal. And the director said, "Well, so we're gonna have to cancel." And the stage manager said, "No, but Soli knows all the lines," and it was true, because I had that kind of recall. It's not for the graphic, but I'm sitting in rehearsal, I'm watching the rehearsal, I'm interested, and so I remember stuff from it. But if I watch it enough, then I start knowing all the lines. So then I fell into that, and then the first show that I ever went on stage with, on a professional stage, I had a lead role, and I did really well. People really liked it, and there I was in the theatre, and then we did another thing with David Kramer. Had a lot of attention at the time, and then there was nothing. There was nothing because there wasn't really that system. There wasn't like an industry. There was just nothing. And so a friend and myself, we decided to write our own stuff. The thing was just, if we were going to do anything, we were going to continue working in performance and performing arts, we were going to write our own things then. And so we started writing stuff, and that was the beginning of. So it was born firstly out of that need to perform and have roles to perform. And then when we look at like kind of what content, wow, it's kind of obvious. yeah, to talk about the human condition. If we were to talk about the human condition, then the apartheid and what was happening to us, and then subsequently, all my work has on some level focused on something like that. My very first show that went marvelously big was Take Two. I did 11 weeks at the Market Theatre upstairs, unheard of. I
Ah,
came out of nowhere, and it was the top show that year at the Market Theatre. It was people went crazy. Colored people came out of parts of Johannesburg who'd never been to the market before, and they came to see it. My show sold out. It was just, and it literally was just, hi, this is what colored people in the Cape are like. And I know in the
yeah.
States the word colored is tricky, but in South Africa it means something different. And it was really just a reflection on this is. It was literally my whole plan was that it would be a reflection of. I remember I actually took a writings of Elaine Durbach. She had done a research on the people after they'd been moved from District 6. Funny how my life works. The last, really, I'm currently obsessed about anything to do with District 6, but the very first show that I did was about the people who had just been moved from District 6 and how they landed, in fact, how people landed on that side. And it went really. And then I just started writing my own stuff. Because when I was talking like this, when I was in interviews, when I was talking to other creatives, they would just say, "You should write that stuff down. You should find a way to do that stuff." And so I did. The theater became my exercise in how do I manifest what I think and what I feel
I
and the
just want to
stuff that.
I just want to take you up on that point because you've just raised a very, very interesting point, and that is how do I manifest what I feel? And you said it's funny how life works, and I think of Gary Player, who famously said many years ago, "The more I practice, the luckier I get." And when you think about life, there are things in a particular direction, and it's almost like life is just saying, "Okay, here you go. I'm giving you a helping hand." Have you found this?
Oh, I have two answers for you, and they're both tales. The one is I'm a storyteller, so
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
one is about Gary Player. So I have no evidence of this, but I have a story about my grandfather and Gary Player.
Okay.
So my grandfather, it is held in my family. It's the first time I'm actually publicly telling this story. It is held in my family that my grandfather, who I apparently look like a lot, I don't look as much. I mean, I physically resemble my family, but in terms of this dark, sort of skinny shape, that was my grandfather. And so my grandfather traveled from somewhere up north on a bicycle to Cape Town, um, to come to Cape Town. My grandfather decided he was coming to Cape Town,
Right.
and he would just get on a bicycle and come to Cape Town. And my grandfather, what he did was, and how he survived also in Cape Town, my grandfather was well, shall we say, grifter.
Okay, got it.
My grandfather was a hustler of note. My grandfather could sell you a gun made of soap, and that's it. My grandfather had 1,000,001 plans all the time. My grandfather always had a plan. There was always something that he wanted to do. And some of the stuff he was extraordinarily successful at, and some of the stuff was Titanic-like in it.
It just sunk like a stone.
But the story about Gary Player and my grandfather is that my grandfather held that before he got on his bicycle and came to Cape Town, he caddied for Gary Player. So I've actually met Gary Player in my life, you know that, but I've never asked him. I've never told him the story. But because it was my grandfather who was the damn art hustler, I'm not going to let My grandfather put me in that situation.
Oh
But that's
gosh.
what my grandfather. Anyway, so the second story is that it was very rainy a little while ago, and I was walking down the road, and it was in this time of COVID, and it was raining, and it was one of those opportunities to slip out and go to the shop and get something.
Mm.
And I was feeling a lack of concern for the rain. I was feeling a little low and dejected, and so I felt a lack of concern for the wet and for anything really. And actually, in hindsight, it was quite a beautiful sort of. It wasn't like stormy. It's a soft rain and really quite beautiful. I didn't actually notice, and I was deep in thought. I was very troubled, and I was walking to the shop, and I saw a piece of paper lying on the ground with writing on it, and that's significant for me because I read everything. I'm a compulsive reader.
Right.
So it's worse now that I'm older because I can't actually quite see what something said. And so then I have to give up the thing about I have to go. I'll never know what that said. But if I see writing, I have to read it. I don't know, some disorder, I think. I don't. But I love reading. And anyway, so I was walking, and I was so dejected that I saw this piece of paper with writing on it, and I walked right past it. And that's the first time in my life that has happened. It was so big that I stopped in my tracks and thought, did I just do that?
Mm.
Because I know myself fairly well. I study myself well, and so I thought this is worthy of examination. So I retraced. I literally walked backwards, and I stopped and I picked up the piece of paper, and it was a quotation, and it said, well, I think the one said prosperity, and the other word it was something along those lines, abundance. But the quote, it was a biblical, what do you call it? What you call it? It was a
Verse?
biblical quote, but a verse. It was Proverbs. I'm going to misquote now, but I think it's Proverbs 13 or Proverbs. What I know is that it is the proverb of the sower.
Mm.
Because when I looked at it, I thought I recognized this. It's Matthew something. I thought I recognized this, and then I Googled it immediately. I had my phone on me, lucky, and I saw there was the proverb of the sower. And the proverb of the sower is something that has particular meaning to me because it was one of those when I was at young and in Sunday school and studying. We were studying stuff, the Bible, and we were getting ready for confirmation. The proverb of the sower it came to me like a revelation. When I read it and when we discussed it in Sunday school and with the priest, it was so beautiful to me. It was the proverb that said, "God's word falls amongst the thorns, and God's word falls on the tar and amongst the rocks, and God's word falls on fertile ground." And where God's word falls on fertile ground, you're assured of victory. And when as a child, when I read that, it was just for me too much. It was so beautiful. I thought all I wanted to be was fertile ground. You can imagine. I just wanted to be. That's all. That's what my understanding of life was, that I wanted to be fertile ground, so that when God's word fell, I would be assured of victory. So then I saw this problem, and I thought, oh my word, this is my childhood. This is continuum stuff. This is God reminding me to be fertile ground. And I'd engaged this a little while before that with a priest. I haven't been to church in yonks, I think 3 decades, and engaged with the priest from our church as a friend, and then arbitrarily just asked if he would fulfill the services of a priest for me at this time. So I got a hold of him and I said, this happened to me. It's extraordinary. And he said to me, so do you think you got it? Do you think you got what the thing meant? And I said, yes, it means be fertile. Be fertile so God's word can fall and you can be victorious. And he said, no, well, think about it again. I don't want to tell you what it means. But clearly that's not what it means to you. If that's what it's always meant to you, that's not what it means. God wouldn't send it to you again to remind you, this. God's telling you something else. So check it out. And then it was like someone had thrown cold water over me. I just went, bow. I thought, oh my word. The point of the proverb of the sower is that if you are the fertile ground of God's word, you are going to win. God assures you.
Yeah.
Don't worry. You have no need. Don't stop stressing. Stop stressing. You do my work, and it's on fertile. It falls on fertile ground. My word. And what is the word? Be kind. Care for one another. Look out for one another. Be in community.
Yeah.
And if you follow that, you will win.
Yeah. Now
You're
just
sure of
talking
it.
about that, Soli, you're a philanthropist as well, aren't you? I mean, you help causes and things like that. It's sort of part of who you are.
So there's this thing that is happening to me. Um, that I'm starting to understand who I am. A lot of who I have been has been an instinctive following of something. That if you had asked me to even articulate what that something was, I would have really struggled with it to articulate it. But it's become clearer to me, and in the last while, it's revealed itself to me. So my biggest desire in the world, in life right now, is an understanding that colored hegemony is probably one of the most fundamentally saving possibilities for this country. Um, and I don't mean a mainstream response. I don't even mean the Hartful Capetonians marching yesterday. I mean colored hegemony. And when I say it, I mean it about a time when it was healthy. When under apartheid, my people lived here in the shadow of the mountain. And it wasn't really in the shadow of the mountain because the sun rises in the east. So we were living in the glory of the sun. And the sun set behind us at the end of the day. And the mountain protected us.
Right.
And living there as undesirables, as a people who weren't respected, who weren't valued, who weren't considered. They lived very successfully. Our children were safe always. We had so few resources, but our children were safe, and our women were safe. Our women had so few rights, but they were safe.
Right.
And our people were a community. We had so little. We had tiny pockets of land, and we had very little small spaces dotted on top of that. But we were a community, and we could rely on each other. And our lifestyle worked. We survived, and we survived happily and with meaning. We developed culture and language and joys and sorrows intrinsic to us as a people, and and it echoes in me because this is the funny part of my living. I did not grow up in District 6, but when I was a child, I visited here and I played here, and I have no memory of it. I only have the memory of how it feels when I walk here and what I hear on the wind, and, and what moves me when I'm here. And it's currently at a time where they are busy with restitution, and it's being done in the most extraordinarily insensitive and horrendous way. And so I'm currently feeling like I a long time ago I lost my home and I lost the center of my people, and I'm currently feeling like it's being done again. I'm feeling like I feel my heart feels like bulldozers are tearing at the very
I get it.
intangible manifestation of my heart, very very intangible manifestation of my heart, and and it is terrible for me. I I feel like I am watching myself die. And it's the most terrible feeling. And I only find answer in understanding that if there is any meaning to that, then it must be that in shaping where we go from here, in understanding how we live with this.
Do you think society in South Africa has failed the Rainbow Nation?
I think it's important to understand that when Madiba spoke about the Rainbow Nation, it wasn't something that was in existence. It was something he was asking us to aspire to. He was asking us to work with him and reach for that. It was a reach he was asking
Yeah.
for. And even he knew how much he was asking. And I think it is the shallow interpretation of our history and the shallow understanding of quite what Madiba dreamt and what he meant. And that 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 stops us from still with so much passion and need reach for what he showed us was actually a beautiful resolution. It's just the I think there was a lack of understanding amongst everybody in the world that of course that's not a reached place. Of course we have to journey there, and not us, the whole world. It's it's Black Lives Matter. It's the
Right.
whole world, everywhere where it's about sanctity of life and quality of life. That living is about pursuing the nobler instincts. It is about higher vibration. There is nothing squabbling in the mud and wanting to be the lowest and care the least, be the most indifferent, have the most. What is to be gained from having the most money? What do you get? What do you get when you're the richest person in the world? What do you get when you're the most assured of a tomorrow? Oh my God, my tomorrow is assured. What fool believes that? Who believes that? How do people just believe that? How do you just believe the lie?
Yeah.
This fake construct. How does it just stand there and ruin people's lives? Just
Yeah. It's the moral compass is definitely missing in parts of South Africa, isn't it?
it's really hard. But I also again I find my comfort in the understanding that I think we're amazing. I think South Africans are extraordinary. I think we have to be reminded often. I think we have to be smacked in directions. I mean, it's terrible that we're always using violent metaphors. We have to be pulled right and all that stuff. But it's the thing that I find the most irksome about South Africans, because I can literally argue with just about any South African and bring them to the point where they understand that, oh my God, actually, I actually have to be thinking about my country and about us, how we share this and how a future looks for whoever comes after us. We don't even have time yet to consider, climate change and ah, all the things. I was saying, somebody, somebody was saying, what the hell? I was saying, yes, I'm starting to feel like I'm waiting for somebody to say, can you just shut up? Are you actually literally going to shout about?
I'm loving what you're reaching deep within yourself, which is lovely to see. Now, I want to change the track a little bit here, Soli. The lockdown that's happening in South Africa at the moment, this must have had a huge impact on you, because your industry is entertainment, and the lockdown has completely destroyed the music industry in South Africa. The artists who perform in front of people, they can't perform anymore. How has the lockdown impacted on you personally?
So, I don't know. Okay, everything is going to be like a 9-year answer. But the thing about it is, I'm a bit of a. Ooh, I'm a bit of a maverick, so and I'm a bit of an independent voice. And I've had a lot of mainstream noise about stuff that I've done, like on television. I've done very successful shows, like hit shows, and
Right.
so there's been not those things. And I've done radio, and I've done really good radio, I've had talk radio, and really, as I told you, I just launched myself in with everything. So I found real engagement and real committed fanhood around that kind of thing. And then, in the theater, and then, to comedy and all those kind of things. So, but before lockdown, so here's the thing about me is a couple of years ago I got divorced. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago. No, I didn't get divorced then. I split from my partner, my life partner. We've been together forever, 33 years, I think. But so it was divorce and all that. And my children are big, so they're like my adults, I call them. So, so I had all that stuff to deal with, and had some issues around myself and identity and gender and stuff. Just something about an evolution and a realization about coming into myself more about some things. Anyway, and then yeah. So I went into a phase. It was a twofold thing. My children were also now all big and finished with school and all that, and so I suddenly found myself in this very odd space where I was working because I wanted to on creative stuff. And I'm an impulsive creative, so I must have something must move me. I must feel obliged to say something or articulate something. But I can't just sit down and write. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. There has to be something makes me sit down and write.
Right.
Um, and but so that also means that because I was Tony, my ex, we were together for 33 years. My career and everything, she was with me through everything. So all those things were kind of like group efforts,
Right.
uh, she's my sounding board. I have ideas. I helped me write things, all that sort of stuff. So I was in a space where for the first time I was doing work on my own and having to resist phoning her all the time, going, help me with this. And I was doing some other work for other people. I did a really nice thing, App Drag, which was at the back. It was like a gender thing. And then I did Endgame, which was the Beckett, which is, it was also like a circle thing for me. For years ago, I did Godot, and I played the boy, which is a tiny part, but I traveled all over the world with it. Even to the States, I met Al Pacino and Harry Belafonte, and I was at the
Wow.
Long Wharf. Yes, no,
You
no, no,
met
yes.
Harry Belafonte?
I so damn did. And Harry Belafonte also thought that my 10 seconds on stage as the boy in Godot I was lovely at that. And I also met Al Pacino, who shook my hand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Al Pacino is the gangster, wasn't he?
Well, Al Pacino, then I saw Al Pacino the next night in, what is that American play with Willie Lomax in them? No, that's Death of the Salesman. I saw him in American Buffalo. He did American Buffalo, and he did a run of it. They did it, and I went to go and see him in it, and it was amazing. But it was also amazing to see the kind of commitment from American theater audiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hats off. Hats off. That's definitely, it's a culture,
Yeah.
But so in the lockdown, and so just before that, and then I went into a bit of an introspection period. I was spending a lot of time by myself. I was doing a lot of writing and just focusing on stuff like that. My friends were getting pissed off with me. And just before lockdown struck, I was like, I started coming back, and I started sort of seeing people more, and I was starting to work more as well. And work was just lining up suddenly, and boom, here came lockdown. And so what I did was I kind of thought it's interesting that this happens, that we get to be isolated from each other, and that my children were fairly safe. My ex was fairly safe. My mom was good. So all the people like that, close to me like that, they were all sort of in controlled environments, my brother. And then so it was just the people that I knew and my friends and everybody. And then I just started writing. I've been writing like a crazy person, and it only sort of seeds. It kind of trickled down in the last 2 weeks. But for the time of the lockdown, I have been writing, and it's just all really good stuff. And because it was the last thing I wrote, nice quote, just before going into lockdown, or actually a couple of years ago, was a thing about Cape Town. It was a narrative about Cape Town. It was my take on Cape Town, and it was a rhyme. It was an hour and 15-minute rhyme. Got rave reviews. People loved it. Everybody says it's like everybody should see it. And it's just literally that. It's a narrative about Cape Town. But the rhyme developed, and the rhyme is something that I started also many moons ago. But in that, I do the whole thing. I wrote the thing right, and then when lockdown struck, I decided to do a diary. So I have one. I think I don't know how many days. I stopped after a while, but I have one for about, I think. Oh, I should check, but I think a month. I think 60 days, or even more. I think 2 months. I was just where I daily wrote a rhyme about whatever the mood and what was going on and where we were in the progress of it. And funnily enough, on Saturday I went. They asked me to speak at the Lift the Smoking Ban protest, and and I read as one of the posts that I wrote, because it literally was an open letter to the collective, to the Stills guys, and and I read that, and it was completely relevant and made complete sense. That people thought it was perfect for the thing, and so what I'm trying to say is that the writings in those things are completely related to the lockdown experience. So, but of course, it has been hugely impactful in terms of engagement around finances and work. But in the midst of it, there's been an awareness has developed about that amongst Joe Public, and people are being very supportive. So I think it's a time actually to start capitalizing on that mood amongst people. And there's currently a whole thing that the president has sent back about the copyright bill, that there's a lot of activism needed around going forward, because it was actually I'm busy upskilling myself on the debate, but the bill basically means that South Africans will be able to have, it's the fair use bill. You have it in the States, fair use, and it protects people who produce content,
Right.
actors, workers, and all of that. Even people who write technical books and all that. You're protected under copyright laws. So we don't have that. And so there's been an appeal to our government to get that going here. And so then a bill went to government, but then it was blocked now by the president, sending it back because of objection, note, from US and EU production companies and houses, and these people saying, no. And bizarrely, when there is fair use laws in the United States and in Britain, places like that, equity, Britain has equity. Here, they saying, no, our government shouldn't allow us to have that. So that's, as you can imagine, hey, look what Soli's shouting about now.
Now, let me ask you, Soli. You have this you have this remarkable ability to see things from a different perspective to most people. You have a very emotional philosophy, or there's something about you that's very different and quite extraordinary. How do you think this lockdown is impacting on the soul of South Africa, this hard lockdown? How is it impacting on the people of South Africa?
Well, it's interesting because I think we're in the middle of a shift. You're catching us in the shift. If you'd asked me this a little while ago, if you asked me this at the beginning of the lockdown, there was that beautiful moment when the president just stepped in. Suddenly everybody just went, oh my gosh, look at the president. And he was, he had right urgency tone of urgent tone, and he was engaging, and he was really sincere, and he was talking to us, and you could feel the mood in the country. You could feel the mood. South Africans were feeling very positive about addressing this. And even though it was very worrying and the noise around it was terrifying, he managed to give us a sense of kind of like, let's not panic, let's address it. I think since he has just been horribly let down all over the place, horribly. Let me say why I say that. We're South Africa. We're masters, literally, as a country. We are masters of avoiding confronting our issues. We really are. We really are. We will scream about just anything else but the issue. We really will. Um, if I'm going to use a stark example, let me use a really, really stark example. Farmers are being killed on their farms for no other reason than they're on their farms. I mean, there isn't actually really, literally, if we look at the bare bones of what is happening, people are being killed on their farms. And why? Because they're on their farms. And their stuff's being taken and they're being horribly, horribly murdered. Now, come and tell me, anywhere in the world, you address that as a country, just the bare facts of that people are going to say, I don't want to discuss it now. I really don't want to talk about it now. No, but why? Why don't we rather talk about this? But what about that? Why don't we do this or the other?
Do you think Ramaphosa is in denial about the farm murders and the farm attacks? Because he seems to be avoiding the point.
Not at all. I think the point about it is that any engagement around it right now, let's be honest about this. Any engagement around it right now from government is wrong. Doesn't matter what they do. It really doesn't matter what they do. The thing has been set up so, and this is what infuriates me about South Africa at the moment. It infuriates me. It has been set up so that there is only one response, and if it's not that response, then ha ha. The meaning is ha. That's what the meaning is. And it's just not true. Cyril Ramaphosa actually isn't some ignorant buffoon deliberately sitting in a room somewhere hoping that, well, not too many die. I really, there is nothing inside me that can make me believe that. There is nothing anyone can tell me that can make me believe that. That man clearly knows what is going on. Whatever decisions and however he is choosing to address this, it's not out of ignorance. And it's not out of a lack of disregard either. Or out of a disregard. I think it is clearly these are the ways we are surfing. This is the thing we are dealing with. If you look at it, I had this conversation with a friend of mine a couple of days ago. He was in deep distress because of his own cousin who really wasn't clear that she ever wanted to go to school ever again. Now she's presenting problematic, is what we would call it. And his choice was to step in there and just tell her exactly how the world works. And then now she's even more alienated from it. And I said, well, for me, that would just be obvious that you would be more alienated because you are an older generation saying to a younger person, dude, this is when you don't know the hell what is going on. Come on, show me the adult who can say with full conviction, this is what is going on, young person, and therefore, I think you should do this. Honestly, where's that person? We're all pissing into the breeze. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. We're all trying to adjust and make sense of it and find the best answers as the country. Let's do that.
But Soli, I have to say to you, I think that South Africa is just crumbling as a country and as a society it was already doing that under the ANC government when you look at all the corruption that's been going on.
Don't rush that one. Don't rush past that. That is an important point that you make.
Yeah.
Why is that an important point? Because why are we behaving like the problems that are presenting themselves now are unique to this situation? We knew this. Zuma has been carrying on about cigarettes since the damn 90s. That's my point. It is my point. When Chile stands up and mispronounces shit and carries on about crap, can we focus on what he's saying and what it means? Let's forget about having memes about how funny that is, or that he mispronounced that, or he said this like that. Let's listen to what the hell he's saying and let's address that. Because we know him. We've been here before with him. We're not talking about strangers. When Patel goes, list this, and this is more important. What is new about that? We know them all. Why are we reacting like the only answer now is to eradicate anything that... No. If we know better, let's make it better. Let's get the hell in there where Patel is and say, listen now, Patel, this is the best way to bloody do this. This is how we do this. And I insist on my right that I know about things. The things
The
that
trouble
I know
is,
about.
the trouble is, Soli, they won't listen.
No, but make them listen.
Oh.
But the point, the shit is we run to the media, we run to the courts, and they still don't listen. So let's run to them and make them listen.
But they won't.
Then let's call a protest. Then let's go protest there where the sea.
We're having hundreds of protests that are coming up in South Africa now because people have had enough.
Imagine if the whole South Africa went to where they are and protested against them there. Not over here for cigarettes, not over there because people on the Cape Flats are dying, not over there because people on the farms are dying, not over there because people in northwest of Johannesburg are dying. Actually, just South Africans are dying. All of them.
Yeah.
All of them. And we're all putting together because all of us. It's happening to all of us.
Well, a big day is the 19th of August, I can tell you that, because let me just tell you, I'm talking to Dr. Johan van Rensburg this Sunday, and he heads up a group which is wanting to shut down the whole of South Africa from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Wednesday the 19th of August. And he's made exactly the point you're making. He said there's so many different little groups protesting, we need the whole of the country to come together and shut down the country for one day to show the ANC what's going on. Is that something that you would support?
I'm sorry. My silence is actually just... I'm just thinking how to answer. I think we're doing it all wrong. I think...
Tell me how you think it should be done.
Well, okay, let me first say why I think we're doing it wrong. Because the problem with it is that I don't necessarily have the answer. You see, this is the tricky bit. But how we're doing it wrong is that we are still... We started on the wrong premise right from the start, from the beginning. The world started on the wrong premise. There was this idea suddenly that something that was going to happen that we could do nothing about, death was going to come amongst us, and some would just die, and there was nothing we could do about that, and we'd have to accept that. It was right at the start. The first message of coronavirus was, some people are going to die, and you're going to have to live with that. Those of you who survive, you're going to have to live with that. And then it became, at some point, there actually was an argument about, yes, but what about the people who survive? We have to worry about them. There's actually literally an argument like that, right in the beginning there. I'm not saying before we can honestly say, well, considerations like that has to come into play.
Right.
But in response to a life-threatening or, crisis, I've always understood that humanity goes, yes, I know that's the prognosis, that's the diagnosis, but, I'm going to do the living. I'm going to prove everything wrong. I'm going to be the exception. I'm going to be the miracle. I don't accept it. And then you come up with ways and you fashion means to make that happen. That's how people beat cancer. That's how people survive insurmountable odds. They're called insurmountable. You can't surmount them, but you do, because that is the human spirit. That is humanity. That's our power, of the personal power to change things. And it's right there in the virus. It says, if you watch how you behave around other people, if you like cleanliness next to godliness and shit, and you put a mask on, you should be okay. Actually, that's simple. Around behavior. So why if protection and behavior and being safe involve that little, why were we screaming at the beginning? If you die, you die. That's it. Nothing you can do about it.
So you're suggesting this lockdown is really just a waste of time and destroying the economy of South Africa?
Not at all. Not at all. It's
Okay.
very, very necessary, I think. I think it's really necessary. I think the rollout of the lockdown was always going to be problematic. Always, always, always. Listen, please. I'm a non-essential service. I'm a fucking artist, and I'm a non-essential. Literally, literally. Someone who believes that I'm part of the most vital aspect of living, of society, of a healthy society. I've been declared non-essential. You know what? I don't know about other artists, but something in your psyche gets a little sort of like, wow. So I think what has happened in the lockdown is that what started at the beginning of everybody understanding this is gonna roll out and this is gonna roll out shit. It's gonna roll out horrible. I think it rolled out horrible. It rolled out shit, and here we are. Here we are. I, you know, much as I dislike Donald Trump, really, I intensely dislike Donald Trump. I have no neutrality about him. I feel about him like my mother feels about Jacob Zuma. Um, the that was a joke. But my mother really feels like that about Jacob Zuma. My mother cannot see a picture of Jacob Zuma and she goes on a tyrant.
Well, I can sympathise with her. Believe me, that man just makes me.
I'm a bit like that with Donald Trump, but what pisses me off is that I even have to kind of justify Donald Trump. I have to say that all Donald Trump's responses to coronavirus is I mean, it's as crazy as it is. It's also true for Donald Trump. It is a confusing. What the fuck? What is this thing? So it actually even in the Trumpian context, it makes sense that he behaved like he did.
Well, I have to tell you, Soli, that I'm actually a huge supporter of Donald Trump, and I think.
Oh, good luck.
No, let me just tell you something else. I think Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden would be an absolute disaster if he got in as president. I mean, that guy is senile. At least Trump has got a brain.
I'm going to tell you this. In your presidential race,
Yeah.
you have left the rest of the world only with empathy for Americans. Really, really, bruh. From an honest heart, you have left that little political, Democrat versus Republican vibe. Oh my! It's ridiculous. Come on.
They were basically the same page until Trump came along. Can I tell you what I love about Trump? I know this is going to be hard for you to listen to, but what I love about Trump is that he has taken on the establishment at Washington, D.C., and they hate it. That's why he went through these huge investigations about being tied up with Russia. That was all to try and unsettle him.
It's I'll say this for Trump. He's damn clever. But I'm afraid I'm cleverer than him. He's just going to have to accept that as a fact. And that little construct, listen, in the history of media, nobody has dealt as effectively with the media as Donald Trump. He completely took the entire sting out of the media.
Yeah.
He discredited the media.
The fake news.
He really Emperor's new clothes the media. He really he did. He said and now what are you going to do? And what did the media do? The media went, well, no, that was what we were going to do. And he said, well, yeah.
Yeah, I find it extraordinary that I don't think CNN, since 2016, when he became president, have ever said anything good about Trump. They always, if he does something good, they just shut up. They don't say anything. But if he makes a little faux pas or they see something that's wrong, they, cover it for days on end.
I think the thing about it is that, and it's the same thing everywhere in the world. It's who are the trendy people, who are the preferred trendsetters and thinkers and who's the it crowd. And Trump himself at one point was the it crowd. But now the and it's amusing about America because they're always showing us America and America's underbelly in American entertainment, America and America's underbelly. And they tell us all these things, like believe this, everything's corrupt. The legal system is corrupt. The political system is corrupt. America's dying. It's like that civilization, the curves and the stuff. We get all that stuff, but we always get it dressed up very nicely. And the thing about Trump is that he doesn't care if people laugh at him. He doesn't care if he seems uncool. He really doesn't. He doesn't give a damn. And that's just excuse my language, it fucks up the entire narrative for Americans. Because actually, if you screaming, "Where's your morality?" and he's going, "What the fuck are you talking about? Shut up!" And they go like, "But it's not right," and he goes, "So." I'm sorry, and really, it's just how I'm experiencing it. It really, really is. And then at the back of it, I want to go. And it happened. It's an interesting thing because it happened here in Cape Town with the democratic elections, the first democratic elections, and the Cape Townians voted for the National Party. Not the Cape Townians, the people in the Western Cape, and people were outraged in going into the new democracy. I said, okay, the first you can do is stop being outraged. Because our point about a democracy is you vote for who you like. And secondly, I said, excuse me, if the people of the Western Cape vote for the National Party, are you now going to dislike them? Are you going, oh, well, we don't like you because you vote for the National Party? Is that the criteria? Because then we must know. It's like what's happening in the States, the Republican Democrat thing. If people are accusing each other of being traitors,
Yeah.
people are going like, we want to see this country go to the crown. America is terrible. I mean, it really is quite, in a way, melancholically sad. Because the truth about it is that America has been sold to the world. As what we see on our screens and stuff, and the nicely contextualized stuff. Everything makes sense. America's got it sorted, and that's been proven a lie. So for the rest of the world, we are just watching what you guys are doing, and sometimes in a little bit awestruck, and sometimes just completely dumbstruck. But I think we are going through the humanizing of America. All that superpower, and we also the thing is.
I tell you what, there's a tale of two countries here. You got China, and you got America. Now, China's becoming the new world power, and America is it's also kind of just cracking up with all these protests that are going on and all this contention that's happening. Whereas China, everyone is so controlled.
China could only do that with the collapse of America, the seeming collapse of America. Because, you see, it doesn't matter. America's standing in the world has always been, it doesn't matter what anyone else does, they're competing with the States. Because, America's first in the world. And you mustn't forget that a lot of that first in the world was because of democratic principles and freedom and justice and liberty and all those things. It was a huge part of that. So when American identity started becoming around an issue, a sense of if you were crying out about First Nation status and First Nation identity, you might be problematic. Or if you were talking about how immigrants were being treated, you might be problematic. Or or how things are for Hispanics in the States, you might be problematic. Or for African American people, you might be problematic. And do you know what I mean? That sort of like it started to sounding the noises that were coming out of the States had a lot to do with sort of even right up to that thing about arguing about Melania Trump's was she an immigrant? And
Yeah.
and and you would want to say, they did that with Obama, but it's actually not the same. Literally isn't the same. When they did it with Obama, it was for completely different reasons. We know there's no. With Trump, it was with a specific reason. It was about identifying Americanness, and that Americanness was associated with certain values, of theoretical values, so that in expression becomes practical. That seems like anomalies. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And on one hand, you want to say, we want to protect the integrity of American society. We want to be assured that our education system is good. When American kids go to school, it's good. But then we know that in the inner cities of America and those places, the kids fall through the cracks like the cracks are canyons. And then I'm going to say all that stuff around gender-based violence and those things, and then it's all this stuff about in the movie industry and the arts and entertainment industry, in politics, and all that stuff, and there's this constant alienation of the American identity from those big founding father principles kind of things. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that hasn't happened in the last few years. That this eroding of the culture of America has been happening for the last 60, 70 years.
But the last couple of years, it's been like an intensification.
Oh
of
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's getting worse and worse. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because no one is addressing the root issues. There's a lot of symptomatic response, or like response to symptoms, and not like root issues. And I think that is again, that's why the levels of these like with Black Lives Matter, the levels of engagement intensify. So
But don't
because
you think that's indoctrination of the children or the young in America by the school system? That's why they're so embracive of movements like Black Lives Matter. Now, I have to tell you that again, I don't agree with Black Lives Matter. I think it's a criminal organization. Let me just finish.
Okay, no, about Black Lives Matter, I just want to say that thing. Just to repeat what you said now before you got to Black Lives Matter. It's quite an important thing you said.
Yeah, I think that the actual foundation of the Black Lives Matter movement is actually a criminal organization. It's been funded by George Soros and Open Society Foundation. And you know what he's doing around the world. Now, my view is that all lives matter.
You're rushing me. I wanted to talk about that first point you made.
Okay, go ahead.
About what did you say? You said before you spoke about, you said something just before you said Black Lives Matter. You said something about indoctrination.
Yeah, the indoctrination in the education system.
No, but you see, if we're saying that the conditioning of inner city schools in the United States of America and the quality of it is low, we know this.
Mm-hmm.
It's been problematic for moons, for many, 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 many years. But objection to that is criminalized. It's the same as here with us. It's exactly the same. Objection to it is criminalized. So if objection to it is criminalized, then if a real objection to it stands, is held, and is criminalized, what is the meaning of any other project or program that is addressing that? It just means it is shaped and sculpted along lines of this is what we think should happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, and similarly with Black Lives Matter, for whatever George Soros' motivation might have been, and whatever criminal intent might be behind Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter is born out of a need to articulate correctly the idea that within systemic racism, Black people their lives mean a certain way. And if you can't acknowledge that, then you refuse to acknowledge that systematic racism exists. And systematic racism just exists. It's the lived experience of Black people. And so it's very hard to then kind of go, well, how can I not isolate this lived experience, tell you about it, because it fits within that realm, and have it addressed within that realm. It's like the demand to acknowledge that farmers' lives matter. It's placing it completely in a realm. You don't want to start debating about when you say farmers' lives matter. You don't want someone else to say, well, and petrol pump attendants' lives matter too. You really don't.
I
You're
don't agree
putting
with
it
any
in
of those statements.
where you want it isolated, where
I,
you want it
Solly,
clarified.
Solly,
Clarified.
I don't agree with any of those statements. I believe all lives matter. And I'll tell you
Yeah,
my
but
reasoning. Let me tell you my reasoning.
the point though is if you have to say all lives matter, what are you saying? Isn't that the intrinsic understanding of living? That all lives matter.
Exactly.
You don't
Yeah.
have to say
Yeah.
you don't have to say it. It is an understanding that all lives matter. The reason you say Black lives matter is because it doesn't in a lot of contexts. That's why you say it. Black lives matter because it doesn't matter in a lot of contexts. And that includes South African contexts.
Okay. Well,
A
let me
world.
put this argument to you, Solly. If we've been talking about farm murders in South Africa. Now, if a white farmer and his family gets murdered in the most terrible way by a group of people, there's no media coverage of that. Okay, now we're talking about a white farmer and his family. Hang on, let me just finish. And
It's not true what you're saying. We do get media coverage of farm medicine. Well, how do I know about farm medicine if we get
well,
no
because
media
of the
coverage?
alternative media, you
No,
show.
that's not. I
You,
get it on like mainstream media as well.
okay. Well, let Solly. Let me talk about this on an international perspective. Okay, let's use CNN as an example again. Okay, now CNN, they won't touch a murder where a white family have been horribly killed. But if, like in that coffin case, you get those two white guys who put this black fella into a coffin to try and intimidate him, that was international news because it depends the color of the person who's committing the crime. That is how the media are covering today. It's their narrative. It's trying to instill into people watching that somehow the whites are systemically racist, which is not true. They are not racist. And what it's doing is it's causing a huge divide.
Hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
You cannot, by the same way that you cannot say blacks are this or whites are that, you can't say whites are not racist. You can't say that. You can't say blacks have no rhythm. You can't say there are white people who are racist and there are white people who are not racist. And this homogenizing of white people as a group is really problematic in the world.
That's exactly my point.
It's particularly problematic in South Africa with our history. It is problematic. We just go white people, then we just go, what? There's no point. The conversation's done. It's over. The idea is that white South Africans all unite as one common group. No, that's not true. You know that, and I know that.
Yeah.
Not true for South Africans. We don't. It's not like all white people and yes, we're a group together. No, it's really not true. I don't know where that exists.
Yeah.
But my point is, we have like literally we have now these guys here in Cape Town going, brown lives matter. The point about it is, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I just realized I did this little thing with my hand. Brown lives matter.
And Boer lives matter.
Like, no, but yeah. I don't know. You see, Jack, the thing about it is that when something happens, like George Floyd, when it happens in public like that, there is something that happens, and I think honestly, I think there's something about the history of the world that is again for black people thrown out there and manifest again. You know, the history of the world is a sordid and sick one. And so like, you know, like they call things triggering. I think for generations of black people, that's going to be triggering for a long time. And to have something like that happen again in modern time, and then with a sense of that, like it's, it's part of a thing. But like in our country, like you say, white people aren't racist, but in our country, we still have so much incidences of racism. You go and watch like things on platforms. The kind of racist diatribes and stuff.
Well,
There we can't deny
seriously,
it.
Soli, what about Julius Malema and Andile Nixitama? Don't you think they're actually stirring the racist pot?
Yeah, you see, my point is, when you do that, you're asking me to why am I not dealing with both the racist I'm referring to and Julius? So I'm asking, how did that become my responsibility? All I was raising with you is that you get white people who are racist. That's all I'm raising with you.
Oh yeah, look,
was not
I get that. I get that.
No, 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 wait. But the thing is, the important thing about it is that if you then, your response is, no, well, yeah, then we can say, go, okay, well, we have to do something about that. Now let's look at over here. Oh my God, look at Julius Malema. Oh Jesus, we have to do something about that. But if when I go, hey, this is not cool, and you go, well, what about Julius Malema? It sounds to me like you're saying, well, my uncool thing is not important. Doesn't matter that
Oh
I'm
no, I'm not saying
experiencing
that
this.
at all. I'm not
No,
suggesting
no,
that
no.
at all.
I'm following the train of thought for you about how a response that like all lives matter can for some people I think quite triggering. They go like, oh, for God's sake, because it is true. It is. If you say to me all lives matter, it's like you're presuming that I think some lives matter more than others, and it's a wrong presumption to have about me, because I don't think so. I think lives matter. Of course I
Yeah,
do. That's
yeah,
the big
well, yeah,
premise of everything I believe. But that's not why I say Black Lives Matter. I say
yeah.
Black Lives Matter because they don't in so many contexts.
Okay, well
That's the point of it.
let's just accept that we have different interpretations on the actual that particular area. Let's move on.
No, we can, you see, but this is where a lot of the argument in the country gets stuck. And now we've got people not talking to each other. Mensen van elkaar mark, it's like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
this and you that. And it derails the whole thing. And you know what's bizarre about it? It's an American movement. It's an American
Yeah,
movement
that is bizarre.
derailing stuff in this country. And that's bizarre. That is bizarre.
It is bizarre. Now, changing the topic, because I don't want to spend too much time on that particular topic. Um, is there something in South Africa that you feel is really having a huge negative impact on everybody? I mean, is there something that really sticks out that is causing the trouble that South Africa is facing right now? Can you put a finger on what it is?
I think it was the idea that that the DA was taking the same kind of branding policy and strategic approach that I think that the Trump government has. I think they've cooked up somewhere in some kind of think tanks this idea that if you attack wokeness, if you do these kinds of things, then you'll build a certain, and if you start accusing the media of this kind of behavior, then you build that wall over there, and then eventually you've got all those groupings isolated. And then you very problematically just start declaring things. You just start saying things and doing things. And I think, you call for civil disobedience. It all becomes about your rights. It all becomes about me, and my grouping. And I mean, literally, in America, you so seldom now hear Americans talk about America. They talk about Republicans this and Democrats that. You Democrats of this, and they eating each other up. They're saying the most revolting things about Americans. Say the most revolting things about Americans. They really do. I mean, it's extraordinary, but they do.
Yeah.
And so that spilled over here. I'm a firm conviction that when Tony Leon and all these hotshots from the DA went to the United States to go see what they're doing there. And when JP Smith and them goes and sees what the United States crime fighting people are doing, how they're dealing with gangsterism and all those kind of think tanks and approaches, that's what they're doing. And they're strategizing. You can see it. You can see how they roll out this. Well, now we're talking about this. The farm, when John Steenleisen did the farm murders, I mean, God, you didn't want to be in my house. I lost it completely. I was so angered. I was so, my mother-in-law was very, very brutally murdered in this country. When, Anyway, it was horrible. It was terrible. And she was killed by a young black man. And it was the worst time of life for my entire family. My children were small. My in-laws were Anyway, and within all of that, my wife and her sisters didn't deign to dip into a racist diatribe, and they didn't. It was about the monster and what he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't a ditch. They didn't take it to a whole racial grouping and black people are like this. There was none of that. It was an honest loss of someone that they cared about, and by someone who was a horrible monster. And I wouldn't want to ascribe that person to any culture or any race and say that belongs to you. Because that kind of monstrosity doesn't belong anywhere amongst human beings.
No, it doesn't.
So,
I mean, the barbarism is sometimes just shocking.
Oh, Jesus, come on. Come on, that's what I mean. It's like when they start describing how people get murdered on farms, Jesus, who can even listen? Can you bear? You can't bear to listen and you can't bear not to listen. How are things that horrible? How does that happen in your country to your fellow citizens? You tell me how you deal with that shit.
But we don't have too much of a problem here in Australia.
I have to internalize all that stuff. We have to, as a nation, internalize all that stuff. And we have to deal with all of that, and then we have to deal with COVID. And so what becomes problematic is when it starts becoming divisive screaming.
That's exactly right. That this is the divisive side is awful. Now, Soli.
That'll be our. I promise you, that'll be our end. We will bite.
Yeah, well, things aren't looking good around the world, let's face it. Soli, I just want to address the side chat for a moment, people watching. We've got about 300 people watching at the moment. Guys, if there are any questions you'd like to put to Soli, please just throw them into the side chat. And have we got a bid for that painting yet, Marlena? I think I saw a bid for 5,000 Rand, which is good. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay, so Soli, is there a message? Is there a message that you would like to give out to people watching this video now or watching this video later? Just something that comes to your mind. Is there something that just you like to get out there?
Laws and rules are things we agree on as the expression of a common agreement. Laws and rules are a common agreement about what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. They're an expression of that. Rules don't dictate to us what that is. We know, as a human being, you know right from wrong. That's the first thing. You know it. Don't run to the law. The law is your recourse when you have not been able to establish right and wrong amongst each other. If you're running to the law first, there's something wrong. Because why would you need to have the law tell you how to behave? Isn't your behavior, shouldn't you be policing your own behavior? And shouldn't you be managing your own behavior and your own relationships and engaging in positive ways? So that idea of flinging the law, and that includes the Constitution, flinging the Constitution and the law at people as an argument, I find, is don't do it, is what I want to say. Those kind of things are for your personal things about how do you How does it fashion to how you work? But when you engage with other people, why are you engaging around the law? Why aren't you engaging on your common humanity and understanding of how things work? And the second thing is, I really, really want to say to people, people don't have to like one another. You really, really don't. You don't have to dance the way other people dance, and you don't have to eat what other people eat, and you don't have to sing the way other people sing. You don't have to live the way other people live. It, why? And I really want people to consider this. Why can't you live the way you live and happily let somebody else live the way they live? Because you know what that dictates. It dictates that we're sharing the earth thing. And then we can't. You can't. Your pride cannot be that I own this mountain. Because of what worth is a whole mountain to you? You cannot brag. This entire piece of land from coast to coast here is ours. Because what does it mean to you? What does it mean about your relationships and about how you live and the quality of your living? What does it mean? Were you kind? Did you care? Were you a community? Was your upliftment the upliftment of everybody? Did we evolve? Did you help? Or did we just wallow in the mud? Those are our choices always. Wallow in the mud or evolve.
Mm.
Evolve. And you know what? The thing is, the thing for me just is about it all is that, people are such hypocrites. We all get fed into our very, very selves when we're small. No, it's a greater good. There's a heaven, there's a God. Now do God's work. And then we spend our adult years trying to justify why we're not doing God's work. Well, I'm just not doing God's work right now because, the prophet, I've got to watch my business is going to die. I don't watch my profit line. I'm not doing God's work right now because my house is in danger. I'm going to lose my mortgage. Oh, I'm just not doing God's work for a moment because my self-esteem has taken a knock. Oh, I'm not doing God's work because I'm in danger of losing my standing over there. Oh, I'm not doing God's work for some reason. And yet, when we were primed, we were told that's why we're here, to do God's work. But here now, when we were supposed to, we're finding lots of reasons not to. And at the end, you have to look in the mirror. You have to live with yourself. You know what you're doing. That's what I say. That's karma. That's life. That's what living is. You know what you're doing. And eventually you're going to have to face that. It doesn't go away. You can't forget what you do. And if you forget, life reminds you. So I want you to do good. If you're going to be reminded, be reminded that you were good and that you made it better and that you were part of the solution, that you were looking for everybody, not for small groups, for everybody. Yeah, that. A team is a combined thing. It's one whole effort.
Well, you have
strengths,
You have a really interesting and different philosophy to life, I think, to a lot of people, and it's always lovely to get different perspectives and different points of view, because that's how you grow and you learn. And you might not agree with everything that's said, but it's nice to just take on board what someone is putting across to you, and I really value that.
Meaningless if you don't share it. It's meaningless if you don't share it. You just sit there with it with yourself. You don't teach anybody. So you share what you believe in. If it impacts, good and well. If you get something back that enriches it, then you win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And about speaking your truth. And speaking your truth doesn't mean somebody else has to believe you. It means you have to believe yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You speaking truth to you. Yeah.
All right, guys. I think we have a winner for the rhino painting. Jan van Riebeck.
A rhino.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've got the. Let me just show you my big five. I'll just put the camera on so you can actually see. Okay, if you have a look at the wall behind me, you can see the paintings on the. You see behind me there. You see the leopard. You see the buffalo over that side. That side there. It's a big five.
What are you doing? Oh,
you took a snapshot.
Weird, yeah. Oh, there. Oh no, I'm not looking at my own Kit Kat.
we go. That's better.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm gonna give up with this shit.
As I was saying, Soli, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope we can do this again. You know, there were a couple of things I wanted to show you which I didn't, and you know, we were talking about the Griquas earlier. This is this is the book that I wrote, Children of the Mist, and it's been signed by the entire leadership of the Griquas. You know, the Lafleurs and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. But look, there's so much we could talk about that I just haven't included into our discussion. Right, I'm just going to now, in conclusion, I just want to say to everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a quite a lively debate that we've had. And to Soli, thanks, buddy. To the moderators, thanks, guys, for the wonderful work you do. And please be safe. I'm going to shut down this live stream. What was the final bid we got for the rhino painting? Just before I shut down. Yeah, the leopard painting is fantastic, isn't it, Fiona? Okay, guys, Soli has gone. Thank you so much for joining us, and please take care and have a great evening. Bye for now.